Hey all, it's Brian here, and we are on week 3 of our series Waitlisted. Now, I'm sorry we don't have the fancy graphics or editing that we normally have in these videos. Due to COVID lockdown stuff, I haven't been able to go into the church to film for these ones, so I'm just doing it on my phone in my bedroom, actually. So we're gonna go with it anyways. Have you ever had a week where things are going really good in your life and you're like really happy and feeling pumped up about things and things just seem to fall into place for you? And then all of a sudden the next week, like, bam, everything hits you and like all of the good things that you were excited about seem to fall apart and everything is going bad. That's what my last 2 weeks have been like. Last week, I was super pumped. I had been promoted at the job that I have at the school board, accepted for a new really prestigious position, which was going to be longer term, and I was really excited about it. I had nailed the interview, and I was working in the school with students one-on-one, and for the last couple weeks, and things had been really going good. The school was telling me how much they enjoyed me. I built really good connections with some difficult students in the school, and I was just feeling like, okay, I'm like really good at this and I enjoy it. And then boom, this week's hits. And so Friday, everything was wonderful. And then Saturday, the government announces, oh, and school is going back online. And then I get a phone call from who was supposed to be my new boss and saying, oh, the job opening was only if we were in person, so you don't have the new job you thought you were going to have. And I was just like, oh man, that sucks. But then I was like, well, okay, I can get through this. And then I was looking forward to it being March break, even though it was a delayed March break, and was going to go outside a lot. And then I looked at the weather report and nope, it's cold and rainy all week long. And then I got a phone call from my boss at the current school that I work at. And they're like, we hate to tell you this, but one of the students that you've been working with has been diagnosed with COVID and you have to self-isolate it and go get tested. And I was supposed to go and get my COVID shot this week, and I had to stay in self-isolation until after, so I had to cancel my ability to get my vaccine, and now they're trying to reschedule it, but they don't know when it's going to do. And it seems like all of these good things that were going on in my life that I was really happy and excited about all kind of came crashing down around me in a short period of time. Have you ever had something like that happen in your life? Maybe that's kind of what things have been like for you during COVID time. There was a lot of good stuff going on. You were excited, looking forward to this year. Some of you, this was the year you were starting high school. Some of you, this is the year you were finishing high school. And you were looking forward to all the things that were going on with this. And now none of those things are happening the way you thought they were going to. And all of your hopes just kind of flew apart. What do we do in times like that? Well, I want to look today at the story in the Bible of a guy named Joseph. It's all the way back in the book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible. And many of you will be familiar with it. You know, you've heard it from stories in Sunday school class, or there was a very famous musical about it that maybe you've watched. But in it, and it's a long story in the Bible, so I'll just give you the highlights. There's a kid named Joseph, and he's got everything going for him. He seems to be really in favor with his dad. His dad's even giving him special presents to show him how much he loves him. Even though he's the youngest child, I'd say he is definitely spoiled. Also, God has given him some amazing abilities, and he has dreams and visions that tell him that there's something big that's coming in his life that God is going to use him for. And he's walking around on cloud 9 for a while. But of course, even though he's in this great place, things don't end there. His brothers get jealous of him. Like, I will speak and say that as a older brother, younger brothers who think they're all that are super annoying. Well, Joseph's brothers aren't just annoyed with him, they actually try to kill him. They're like, we're just going to kill him and claim that he was killed by a wild animal, and then we won't have to listen to him anymore. So, if you're feeling bad about your siblings, hey, at least they probably haven't tried to kill you lately. But one brother has a piece of conscience, and he's like, no, let's not kill him. And you're like, okay, he's a good guy. Let's sell him into slavery instead and get money out of it. And so they do. They sell him off, and he ends up in Egypt. And he becomes a servant in Egypt to a very powerful man named Potiphar, who is a general in the army. And his skills and his ability and his hard work really pay off for him. He keeps getting promoted. And the next thing you know, he's in a rather prestigious place of being the number one servant in the household. But when he's there, he attracts the attention of Potiphar's wife, who comes onto him. He runs away. The husband finds out about this, blames him for it. He gets thrown in jail. So there he is sitting in jail. I mean, he did the right thing in a hard situation. And even with that, it seems like his reward is he's being punished even worse. So there he is in jail. But even in jail, he is faithful. He continues having dreams, and he interprets those dreams to people who come to him. He keeps his faith in his God, knowing that God is with him. And in the midst of all of that, he continues to serve whatever way he can. When he was sold into slavery, he served to the best of his ability. Not that that made the slavery right, but saying, hey, I'm going to make the best of a horrible, horrible situation. When he was in jail, he said, I'm going to make the best of a horrible, horrible situation. And eventually, all of those things put him in the right place at the right time, so that when the Pharaoh of the whole kingdom is having terrible nightmares and don't understand what he means, one of the servants of Pharaoh, who had been in prison for a time with Joseph, remembers Joseph's abilities, talks to him to Pharaoh. Pharaoh pulls him out of jail, asks some questions. Joseph gives him the answer and is made number 2 in the kingdom, and helps Egypt prepare for a terrible famine that is coming in. And all of that takes place. So when that same famine hits the land that his family is in, and they have no place to get food, they're able to come back to Egypt to get food. They're reunited with Joseph after some shenanigans. And the whole people of Israel, his entire family, moves to Egypt and are protected through a time that could have destroyed them. So even in the times where things were good, we are tempted to think that things are good because of us, because we're doing things right. When things are bad, we tend to blame others, and especially we can blame God and say, it's your fault that things aren't working good. But the same God who Joseph worshipped when things were going good, he worshipped when things were going bad. And God had a plan through everything that was going on. Now, that plan was so much huger. And of course, the story doesn't end with Joseph. So they're protected during the time of Joseph helping. But as they continue on for the next hundreds of years living in Egypt, eventually they get enslaved again. And it would be very easy at that point to feel like, hey, God, where are you during this time? This was all a failure. This was pointless. But God has a plan in all of this. And eventually he sends Moses to call them out of Egypt. They go out of Egypt and they end up in the wilderness. And in the wilderness, things are hard. And they start saying, why did you drag us out here? It's your fault. You didn't do this. But God has a plan. And eventually they go into Israel. And the story continues on for thousands of years. And there are good times and there are bad times. And sometimes those bad times are laid for very short. And sometimes those bad times end for very long periods of time, hundreds of years. But what the story of the Bible is that God is in control no matter what in all of these things. So as we're in a really hard situation with COVID right now, I want you to hold on to this fact that when things are hard, God is still in control, and we can't see what the end story of this is. So the question is, how do we stay faithful even when things are hard right now? This week was bad for me, but I don't know what next week is going to be. If I just spend all of my time grumbling and complaining and missing out on what is good in my life right now, it doesn't make next week come any faster, but it does make this week miserable. So Joseph, when he was in hard circumstances, made the best of it, of what he can, and remembered God's bigger picture. So, questions for you this week. Have you ever had a time where something that was going really bad and then it turned really good? Question number 2, have you ever had a time when things were going really good and then it turned really bad? Question number 3, what can you do to make the best of the bad situation that we're in right now with COVID? And how do we remember that God is still working in our lives? All right, that's all I have for this week. I'll see you next week. Take care.